and welcome to this edition of Inside Tacoma. I'm your host, Randall Lewis. Our guest for our conversation today, City Council Member Robert Thoms. Welcome back.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me.
And congratulations on getting reelected.
Yes, thank you very much. It's the first time I've been back since the November election.
Right, so that's got to feel good. I mean, you had a credible opponent, and that doesn't always happen with city council re-elections, but you had somebody out there who actually doorbelled my house. And so when the voters say, yeah, we want him back for another term, it's got to feel pretty good.
Yeah, obviously you hope that when you go seek election, especially re-election, that people feel like the work that you've done deserves you to continue serving. So I was very proud to have the support of the people that I've been partnering with for the last 4 years to continue serving on the important issues that the citizens that I represent for Tacoma want.
And you have, we've talked about this before, you have probably the oddest district of the council districts.
The best district, I think.
Well, I live in it, so I can say oddest district because it does involve Northeast Tacoma, which is a very different kind of place. It has the port area and our industrial heart, the downtown, and then the north slope, north end, part of the north end of Tacoma. That's actually a very historic Tacoma, the newest residential part of Tacoma, and then the business heart of Tacoma.
Yeah.
It's all in one district.
Well, I like to think it's not only the heart of our city, but it's the heart of our region, the South Sound economy. And so I look at it, as we've said before, as like you say, I have two, bookend established neighborhoods with the downtown and the port. So it's complex in so much as you have one place that's really far flung, northeast, right, that's growing quite a bit, and then you have a historic neighborhood, and then you have downtown and the port. And so it's sort of that healthy, debate about what are we doing more in our neighborhoods, what are we doing in our downtown, what's going on with the port. So I find it to be, an exciting district to represent. It is somewhat complex, but I'm eager to continue the work of District 2.
All right, and sometimes you get people in those bookends tugging at you from different directions about what's going on in the middle part.
Yeah, a little bit, especially as it relates to land use issues, as we've talked about over the period of time that I've been on the council, which has been sort of one of those issues that's now risen to the top, which is what is the future of our waterfront? What's the future of our uses of our industrial areas in the port? And so I've really got into those issues because I think we can set the future course of what we want for our economic development, what we want to protect our marvelous seaport, as well as open up the waterfront in a way that Tacomans haven't seen heretofore. And so that's very complex, but it's the best thing you could do for my district, and actually for our city, in my mind, is open up the waterfront to more activities for citizens, because God provided us with this wonderful waterfront, and it's for us to best utilize it.
All right, now you just get reelected, you just get sworn in for another term, and now you're in the news again because you're leaving us for a period of time.
Yes, new news. I'm getting deployed to Afghanistan. As you know, I'm a Naval Reserve officer, I'm a public affairs officer, and I haven't deployed since 2011. And for those across our community that serve in the reserve capacity, it's always sort of in the back of your mind that you do this once a month, a couple of weeks a year, and that eventually the call may come for you to go serve the nation for a greater period of time. And in this case, they've asked me to come for 6 months to Kabul, Afghanistan. So I'll be in the thick of it.
Now, that leaves your district, the council seat, plus all the other boards and things and committees that you sit on, unrepresented for a period of time. Council's discussing this issue of how to handle this, right?
Yeah, it's new, and so much as, at least in the city of Tacoma, we've not in any recent history had anybody deploy. We've had certainly staff where we have several people that work within fire, police, and other parts of our organization that have deployed. In this case, we're actually discussing it today, sort of what would be a good solution. I'm of the mindset, District 2 deserves the greatest possible representation. And while I will be paying attention to the issues and lending my voice to my colleagues to say, here are the things that I've been tracking for the past 4 years, what my citizens and partners that I work with think is our future, I'll be sharing those comments. But I welcome the idea of having someone serve for the 6 months that I'm gone, if that's what my colleagues decide to do.
All right. Now, I have to ask you this because this is, you're going to Afghanistan, which last time I checked was a landlocked country.
Yes.
And you're in the Navy.
Yes.
So I'd like you to explain that a little bit. But also, this is the longest war America has ever been involved in. And now it's taking a city council member from Tacoma, Washington away to go serve for 6 months. It just seems like this is a policy discussion that the nation needs to have, but our leaders haven't figured out how to go about that yet.
Well, I mean, the idea of deploying in general is not foreign in our community simply because of our proximity to JBLM and also our naval bases on the peninsula. So, I mean, and not 3 months ago, a neighbor of mine got deployed for a year. He's a civil engineer officer. And so it happens all the time. We're pulling people from the ranks of our community to go serve in these larger things. As it relates to a larger policy, I've always felt one of the reasons why people wanted me to serve on the city council is they believed that I had good qualifications based on my experience in the Navy as a Navy commander and nearly 20 years doing that. And I agree with them. I mean, this is a much larger discussion about where we are as a world, what we do to make our community safe, and where do we do it, and how do we do it, and how do we partner. Like the base I'm going to in Kabul is a NATO base. It is multinational, it's multi-force, and we're trying to take different groups within Afghanistan and try to train them up as Afghani forces so they can protect themselves against the overall tumult that's happening in the region, be it ISIS, be it the Taliban, and what have you. So what that takes is some diplomacy of really bringing desperate groups of citizens together in a country that has many issues that are ripping through there, and putting in some stability and confidence in an organization that they can execute both the mission and also long-term stability for Afghanistan and for the region. Similarly, on the city council, my goal as a council person is to make sure, be it the port as a partner, be it the tribe as a partner, the county as a partner, different neighborhoods, that we're all coalesced around the idea that on the issues that we need our city to perform, we deserve to have performance. That has been my key interest in serving, is I want results. I want us to say there's a challenge, be it the roads, be it lowering crime, be it land use, and that we put mile markers down to success and actually getting results. And it can be baffling at times just because bureaucracies have some challenges, but I fully expect my time in Kabul to be helpful and applicable to the challenges that we have here, and also maybe even lend a voice to all the other men and women in our community that go serve all the time that we don't know as much about. Like I know my neighbor a few blocks away that's doing it, but he's just one of hundreds, if not thousands, of people that leave every month or year from our region to go serve.
I think that's an excellent reminder when someone profile that you have, and the higher profile in the community does. We do have. And it's not unique to Tacoma just because of our proximity to JBLM. I mean, it happens throughout the country, even where there aren't bases like that. There's a lot of folks who are in the reserves who served our country for many years, and I salute that for you as you go forward. Wish you a safe return. At some point in time, we'll have you back on the show and talk about what you learned there, and what you did and didn't miss while you were here. But in the meantime, we have to talk about some things that are pending, and will probably still be pending when you come back, because these are kind of long-term things. And the council last year adopted some interim regulations for the port area of your district to kind of control some land use activities, or put some guides and guardrails around it before this sub-area planning, which is an intense multi-year process that involves lots of stakeholders, begins. So that will certainly be going on when you come back at some level, and for a couple of years to come. Is this really, you think this is really this serious as I've seen it bandied about in social media, the future of the port, the future of our tide class, that's really what we're wrestling with here right now?
I think, well, if you take away just the sub-area plan in general, and let's just say we weren't dealing with that, I think there is a question that is within our larger community about what is the best use of our waterfront, right? And what is its proximity to a large and densely populated area, right? And so I think that's sort of the macro discussion. One of the tools that we think can help us with that, based on the current land use profile of our industrial areas, is a sub-area planning process, which allows us to sort of clearly delineate what is happening, what shouldn't happen, and bring in people to say what are the type of activities we'd like to see happen, how close to the proximity of existing neighborhoods, what magnitude. So in my mind, the last 3 years, be it methanol, be it now LNG, be it the sub-area plan, we're talking in many respects not whether something's good or bad. I mean, there certainly are factions of people that are in that camp, but more to the size and scope and location, right? And I think that's fair for all citizens of Tacoma to have a say in whether or not we want certain things in certain places, and then set the course from a zoning perspective of making that happen. And I think the sooner we get towards a path forward, the more confidence the citizens that have concerns will have, and also, in my opinion, let people know we're open for commerce here, and that we want to continue to be a world-class port that ships stuff all over the world, and the marvelous products that we have here in Washington State, and that we're ready to do even more. But we have to manage, the first question of, all right, what does that entail? And then also, for citizens, we have a responsibility to mitigate the impacts therein, right? Putting up 167 to get some of the truck traffic off the 509 to make it safer for people coming in and out of Northeast Tacoma. Relieve some of that congestion and some of those dangers there for citizens. And it's complex, but it is definitely something that will not be done before I get back. We may not even start it before I get back. My hope is that we will get into this as soon as possible, and I will certainly be voicing my opinion. No matter where I am in the world, the fact of the matter remains that my wife and 3 kids live here in Tacoma, and we very much care about our quality of life. We very much care about the safety of our schools, our safety of our streets, the safety of our community. And so those things, no matter where I am, that is first and foremost in my mind, is how am I protecting my family and yours?
Right. I think you raised an interesting point that doesn't get discussed a lot, which is the interface between this important industrial area in the region, but then also the folks who come from Northeast Tacoma across the tide flats, the cars intermingling with semi-trucks.
Many semi-trucks.
Many semi-trucks. And also something else that you don't see unless you happen to drive over there at certain times of the day, the employees going from one side of a 5-lane highway with 40-mile-an-hour speeds from where they park to where they work, where there's no crosswalks, where there's no actual corners at all. Some of them are Mankey lumber, some of them are Schnitzer steel, some of them are, there's a number of businesses there whose employees I see crossing back and forth in that street, running as fast as they can, sure, most of the time, with usually, hopefully, fluorescent clothing on, so at least they can be seen. But that's another issue that I think I would hope sub-area planning would deal with. How do we safely get
Absolutely.
the businesses that are there, their employees, back and forth across that 5-lane, extraordinarily busy highway?
No, even if the port had no new tenants, we have an issue now with egress in and out of the port, both from a safety perspective and from a citizen perspective and from a commerce perspective, right? And so these are questions that have to be asked and answered and dealt with regardless. That's part of the rationale for the 167 project, right? Was to try to get things to uncongest the areas. So really what concerns me now is, you're right, for many months, several years ago, we had 18-wheelers parked on the curb. Right, which is not safe for anybody's line of sight driving to have 18-wheelers sitting there waiting to go in and pull products off of these ships, right? So the whole infrastructure there, in my opinion, needs a particularly close look at, and then perhaps even when we work through committees like RAMP and other things, to sort of really plus up what is the infrastructure needs we have to invest in there. And when we got rid of the ability to go across the 11th Street Bridge and go all the way across, right, that really pushed all citizens that are from Tacoma and live in Tacoma, and kids that go to Stadium have to come along through all that commerce. Right. And it's, it's a challenge. I've been stuck before where it took me from McMurray Road to the Port of Tacoma Road 45 minutes. And so it says nothing about whether or not there's some major issue where we have to get emergency responders in. That was part of the rationale for putting in the new fire station down in the port, right, is to say, hey, we need to have more resources down in the port to make sure that it's safe for the people that work there, and certainly for the people that live there, that Station 13 isn't coming out of Northeast to serve stuff in the port.
Right. And then the other feature of this area that is a little different than other parts of the city is that this is also the historic, legendary lands of the Puyallup tribe, yeah, who is an economic force in our community as well, and have treaty rights that have to be followed, including consultation with the city and any other, any permitting agency that's going to do something in that area. So that, and we're finishing up a sub-area plan in the Tacoma Mall area. It's not this is not the first sub-area plan we've done. We've done like 4 of them.
Yes.
But that one is not in historic traditional tribal lands. I don't believe the tribe, they may have commented on this Tacoma Mall sub-area plan, but they haven't been engaged with it like they want to be engaged in this one. This is their traditional fishing areas, their traditional grounds. So that's an added bit of complexity and an added nuance to this particular plan that hasn't existed before.
No, and absolutely. I mean, whenever we're talking about our waterfront, obviously our First Nations folks and specifically Puyallup tribe needs to be part of any discussion on that, right? And so in this exercise now, it adds a level of complexity when you get to the treaty settlement. But I welcome their input and their partnership on this because, I mean, they've cared for the waterfront far before we did, and they're a partner with us. So it's just a level of complexity simply because they have their own set of issues and priorities and values that they have for our waterfront, and sometimes that conflicts with others. Right. But everybody's voices should be heard, and most certainly the tribe, regardless of what anyone thinks, is going to be a partner with us into the future on any issues we deal with the waterfront.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think they've made it clear that the era in which they felt like they were being taken for granted is ending, and that they're no, we are here. We are going to engage. We are going to expect to be listened to, and that's just the future we live in now, and that's the way it should be. The treaty's been in place for 100 years. We just now are kind of getting around to living up to it.
Well, in the previous decades, yeah. I mean, my sense is this is just an opportunity for us to partner better as a region, as a South Sound region, and that is going to take collaboration that maybe heretofore hasn't happened as closely and as tightly as it needs to. But we're dealing with our most precious resource, which is our waterfront, and what we're going to do with it in the future, which is protecting its quality, the environmental habitat of it. And so I expect everyone to bring their best efforts towards the endeavor of this sub-area plan as it relates to that.
Now, we described your district as this place with bookends and has the port area, downtown and neighborhood, historic neighborhood and a newer neighborhood. We are expecting 1 million additional people to live in this region, this 4-county region of Pierce, King, Snohomish, and Kitsap. So some share of that 1 million people over the next 20 years are going to be in Pierce. Some share of that number in Pierce is going to be in Tacoma. Obviously, they're not going to be living in the port area. We don't want that incompatible kind of use. Sure. So that means they're northeast Tacoma, perhaps downtown, the north end. The fact that growth like that also causes, it's also an issue because it causes people, well, they like the new things that come along, the new shops, the new restaurants, the new opportunities, but they also then don't like the new things coming along because it disrupts things that were there before. It takes away parking, makes it harder to get through the neighborhood. This is a problem Tacoma has not had to wrestle with as often as other parts in the region have done, but I think we're going to be wrestling with it for the next several years to come.
Well, I certainly have in my 4 years on the city council. I mean, the growth that we've had, me coming in right after the downturn, and we've seen an uptick over the period of time that I've been on the council. It is, and we passed our first bond measures to put more monies into our roads. I mean, that is what I think is the challenge, is how do we as a government stay ahead of the influx of new people? How do we put in the type of infrastructure that makes people that live here now's quality of life better, and then makes people want to live here because they're like, hey, look, guess what? They actually have paved roads, and they care about the sidewalks, and they provide safe areas for bikers to go, and there's adequate amount of infrastructure. That's all very important. So for many years, I would argue the better part of 2 to 3 decades, we were not investing the right amount of infrastructure. In my opinion, government had run afoul, and Tacoma was guilty of this as well, of not focusing on the things that we were supposed to do very well and not funding them, in my opinion, properly. Infrastructure for our roads and streets and stuff like that, making sure, we were spreading less across more, sort of the peanut butter approach, right? And so now what I hope is with this one set of monies that we just put in a couple of years ago, in the next couple of years, we'll go back to voters and say, hey, here's what we really need to bite into this $1.8 to $2 billion hole we got ourselves in. But what we want is growth that doesn't come at the cost of people's quality of life within their neighborhoods, that the right type of infrastructure is there, that it doesn't take them 25 minutes to get home versus 10 minutes to get home, that the streets become less safe because we have more cars going through them without places for them to adequately turn and the like. It's a challenge, but my hope is as we look towards the link expansion, that'll take some of the relief of that off, but that we actually redouble our efforts towards getting more money into our roads.
Okay, and certainly fixing existing streets is a whole lot cheaper than building new ones because you wind up having to buy land and can create all of the infrastructure, the utilities, and all that stuff that goes with them. Where existing streets that's usually always there already, and it's just what's on the surface has deteriorated to the point of some streets are kind of actually embarrassing to drive on.
I mean, I would say after 20 years of what I don't believe we were putting the adequate amount of money there, you could spend the next 10 years doing nothing but fixing existing infrastructure, right? We don't even need to talk about new roads, right? We could be talking about what do you do to put in turn lanes? What do you do to put in turn signals? These are the things that really, in my opinion, I hear a lot from Stadium Business District, 6th Avenue, I mean, there's just a lot of places where if all we did was enhance what is already there and make it to where it has an additional turn lane or a turn signal and stuff like that, that it would make great gains in where we are now. There are several places where we put in new density, like in Stadium, but we don't have turn signals. And then when you talk to people in Proctor that were upset about the Proctor developments, we still don't have regulated turn signals on 30th and Proctor. We don't have it on 21st and Proctor in both directions. We don't have it on 26th and Proctor. So these are things that if you know something's coming and you're adding additional density, with that density, with those human beings come impacts, right? And so we need to do a better job, in my opinion, of figuring out what those impacts are and trying to mitigate them as quickly as possible, if not before the developments even come in.
Or as, I mean, there are cities across Washington who have these things called impact fees, which development pays for those kinds of things. Tacoma has never adopted impact fees.
Yeah, I mean, we've been working closely. Some of my colleagues on the council, most specifically Connor McCarthy, who was doing a lot of land use stuff in the city prior to coming on the council, to strike the right balance between our development community, developers and the like, and those types of changes within permitting, changes in fees and stuff like that. And the commitment that in the meetings that I had with the group of people as we were looking to do some broader strokes across those types of policies is we want to gain your trust that any new monies you would put into the city will provide mutual benefits, meaning these things happen faster, that we actually make it easier for you to get a total picture of what you're going to be looking at. And so we're cutting through some of that now, but I absolutely agree. Impact fees are something to be looked at. I mean, there's obviously an impact, right? And so it's how do you mitigate the impact? And that is something we have to do for people that are here now. I think the best way to get people to come here is when people ask Randy Lewis or Robert Thoms, how do you think it is to live in Tacoma? And we say it's wonderful, right? Word of mouth is the best thing that'll sell this place and the wonderful, views and waterfront. But it's really how you treat the people that are here now that'll beget who will come here in the future.
Now, one of the offshoots of having 1 million people or some share of 1 million people come here is we have not addressed the homelessness issues we have with the current population. Mm-hmm. And again, this is your district that gets impacted a lot by this. The city's largest expenditure to date to deal with the homelessness problem is the transition site is in your district. What are your thoughts? I mean, we declared an emergency, a public health emergency that is continuing on for, I don't think emergencies are just something that happens over a couple of days. I mean, obviously emergencies can occur for some period of time, but at some point in time, we have to make some change to circumstances. Temporary solutions just can't become the permanent solution.
And as it relates to homelessness, I mean, no city should have to be on their own to have to deal with the issues. Because what I found, at least as we endeavored, I mean, our transition center was basically, at least from my interest in trying to support the idea of having one, was to say we are not going to allow people to have to sleep on the streets. We're going to find out why they're on the streets and figure out where to plug them in. And that ranges from everywhere for plugging them into services to making sure they're not doing nuisance type of activities on the street. That is where most people intersect the homeless issue, right? They're not working at the soup kitchen. They're not writing a check to the local nonprofit to deal with it. they maybe go into their business and find there's someone sleeping in their stoop there, or they come out and someone's rifled through their stuff, or these type of things. So until you take care of the nuisance thing and make sure that it looks like there's a downturn in that, you really, in my opinion, have a hard time inspiring people to dig in deeper to the larger societal systemic issues. And I think we've started a good debate here in Tacoma and trying to build upon what has happened in other places to be even more successful. As it relates to our effort heretofore, I think if we do not get better sort of partnership with, say, the county and what they would do on a mental health tax, if we don't get better support from our partners at the state level to figure out what we're doing as it relates to mental health, because there's a portion of these folks that are dealing with mental health. I'm pleased with the efforts that we're doing with opiate issues as it relates to the federal and state level to put some resources towards that, because it's a societal issue. I mean, these people, like, we can't put them in Western. There's no room in Western, right? So where do we put them, right? And some of them clearly, after the law changes and the like, where we can involuntarily commit people, I mean, we really need to do, in my opinion, what I think is very humanistic, is find out why they're there. It's not an insurmountable number. I would argue it's 1,500 or less. And I've said this before, I lived on a ship with more than 3,000 people on it. And I knew at least 1,500 of them by their first and last name, and many thousand, 1,200 of them I knew their wives, their kids. So it's knowing who these people are and making sure we don't let them fall through the cracks. And we have done this emergency declaration here, which was paired with not letting people camp in public spaces, which I think was trying to build that confidence from citizens that, hey, you're actually addressing the part that I intersect with, and we want to wish you the best in the parts that we don't see, right? But you really got to take care of the remediation and enforcement to really inspire people that we're the right people to do the job. If you say, well, that's just part of the equation, you lose people because they don't get into that second and third stage of where they are, right? It's really, what does it look like on the streets? And until we figure that out, we have a hard time keeping people's attention towards the longer term issues.
Well, I suspect the problem will still be here for you to address when you come back from your
Unfortunately, I expect that to be the case.
But we're out of time for the show, and just wish you the very best and come back safely to us. And thanks for being here today.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Our guest has been City Council Member Robert Thoms. We look forward to seeing you next time here on Inside Tacoma.